Rain hit the windshield in waves, the kind that blurred headlights into ghosts. Claire Mitchell tightened her grip on the steering wheel, eyes squinting through the storm. The old sedan trembled on the narrow bridge like it could split in two at any moment. "Mum." Ethan's small voice came from the back seat. "Why's the sky so mad?" She smiled softly, even as her heart pounded. "It's not mad, baby. It's just loud tonight." Thunder rolled over them, a long, bone-deep sound. Her hands ached from clutching the wheel, but they were almost home. 2 more miles and they'd reach the apartment. Warm light, dry clothes, silence. Then she saw it, headlights coming fast from the opposite lane. Too fast. Jesus, the SUV swerved, tires screeching on wet asphalt. In a flash of white and metal, it slammed into the guardrail, spinning, sparks, shattered glass. The world broke apart in sound. Claire's foot slammed the brake. Ethan screamed. The sedan skidded sideways, fishtailing toward the wreckage, when everything stopped. The silence was deafening, the kind that hums right, before you realize you're still alive. Claire's breath came in short bursts. Airbags, smoke, the smell of gasoline. Ethan. A whimper. "I'm okay," he said, small and shaking. She exhaled, then turned toward the other car. It had smashed halfway through the guardrail, front end crumpled, steam rising. A luxury SUV, black, new, expensive. The driver's door hung open. She grabbed her phone. No signal, of course. The bridge was a dead zone. "Stay here," she told Ethan. "Don't move." She ran through the rain, shoes slipping on slick asphalt. The cold bit through her jacket. When she reached the SUV, she could see the driver slumped over the wheel, unconscious, blood running down his forehead. "Sir," she shouted, pulling the door. It wouldn't budge. Come on," she yanked again until something snapped and the door gave. Smoke was thicker now, acrid, choking. She leaned in, voice urgent. "Hey, can you hear me?" His eyes flickered open, unfocused, dazed. For a second, their gazes met. Sharp blue eyes. A face too familiar to be a stranger. "Alexander," she whispered. He didn't answer. Flames licked the dashboard. Panic surged. She reached across, unbuckled him, and dragged him out just as a small explosion rattled the hood. The blast threw both of them to the ground. She coughed, chest burning. He was heavy, bleeding, but breathing. Behind her, Ethan's voice cracked through the rain. "Mum," she turned. "Stay there, baby. I've got him." She tore her jacket off, pressed it against his head wound. "Sir, can you hear me?" He blinked again, breath ragged. "You saved me." She almost laughed, hysterical, wet, exhausted. "Yeah, well, don't thank me yet." 15 minutes later, distant sirens broke through the storm. Paramedics rushed in. Flashing red and blue turned the night surreal. She told them everything she knew, her voice trembling. Clothes soaked through Dot as they lifted him onto a stretcher. One of the EMTs asked, "You said you know him?" Claire hesitated. "I used to." She watched as they loaded him into the ambulance, the man who'd once been a headline. A name she thought she'd buried 6 years ago. Alexander Grant, CEO of Grant Biotech, billionaire, genius, heartbreaker, the man who didn't remember the night that changed her life at the hospital. Chaos blurred into routine. Machines, questions, paperwork. Claire stayed until they told her he was stable. When she finally made it home with Ethan, dawn had already turned the rain into fog. She tucked him into bed, kissed his forehead, and stood by the window as the first light broke over the city. She'd saved a man's life tonight. The same man who'd once unknowingly destroyed hers. And for the first time in years, she felt the ground shift, like fate had just begun to circle back. *, the hospital smelled like antiseptic and too many memories. God, Claire hated that smell, the mix of bleach and exhaustion. It had followed her since nursing school, through every late-night shift, every life she couldn't save, every one she barely did. Now, walking those halls again, she felt like a ghost sneaking through her old life. She wasn't here as a nurse this time. She was here because of him. When she reached room 413, the blinds were half closed. The machines hummed softly, a steady rhythm under the rain tapping on the window. Alexander Grant lay against white sheets, bandaged oxygen tube at his nose. Even pale, he looked like someone used to commanding rooms. His hand rested against his chest, fingers twitching slightly, the only sign of restlessness in an otherwise still man. Claire hesitated at the door. For 6 years, she'd imagined this moment, not like this, but close. She thought maybe someday she'd run into him in a grocery store, or see him on TV again and not flinch. But fate had a dark sense of humor. She took a slow breath and stepped inside. He stirred before she could speak. His eyes opened, still foggy, unfocused, until they found her. "You again," he murmured, voice rough. "The woman from the bridge." "Claire," she said quietly. "Claire Mitchell." He blinked, searching his memory. The name didn't land. Then he frowned. "You saved my life. You were on fire," she said flatly. "I figured you'd thank me better alive." A faint smile tugged his lips. "You always had a sharp mouth." She froze. It wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it, like a half-forgotten dream brushing against consciousness. "Do we know each other?" he asked. Her pulse jumped. "Not really," she lied. "Just a long time ago. College, maybe." He studied her face for a moment longer, then nodded slowly. "I was told I hit the guardrail. Fell asleep at the wheel. I could have killed someone." "You didn't," she said. "Not this time." A knock broke the silence. A nurse entered, holding a clipboard. "Mr. Grant, we need a family contact for consent forms." He looked at Claire. "You're not." "No," she said quickly. "I'm just the woman who dragged you out of a car." The nurse smiled. "Well, whoever you are, you saved a very famous man." Claire forced a polite smile. "Yeah, lucky me." As the nurse left, she turned back to him. "You should rest." "I'll go." "Wait," he said, voice softer. "You mentioned college. Where did we meet?" She hesitated at the door. "It doesn't matter." "Apparently it does." "You remembered me." Her throat tightened. "That's what happens when someone changes your life." He tilted his head. "For better or worse." She looked him dead in the eye. "I'll let you know when I decide." Then she walked out before the past could reach any further. Outside the room, she leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Her hands shook. The hallway buzzed faintly with distant voices, but she couldn't hear them. Just his voice. "You always had a sharp mouth." He didn't remember her, not really, but some part of him almost did, and that was dangerous. Later that day, she went to the pediatric wing to check on Ethan. He was sitting up in bed, coloring clumsy shapes with hospital crayons. "Hey, buddy," she said gently. "How's my brave boy?" He grinned, gap-toothed. "Mum, the doctor said I'm okay. Just a bump." "Good," she said, kissing his forehead. "You scared me." He glanced at her hand, still bandaged from dragging Alexander out. "You saved him, huh?" "Guess so. Are you friends now?" Her chest ached. "It's complicated. Everything's complicated with grown-ups," he muttered, going back to his drawing. She smiled sadly. "Yeah, you're right." That evening, as she packed their things, a knock came at her door. A hospital administrator stood there, holding a clipboard. "Ms. Mitchell, Mr. Grant has covered all your medical expenses and left his card." She froze. "His what?" The woman handed her a sleek business card. "Alexander Grant, CEO, Grant Biotech." On the back, in handwriting she recognized, were 4 words. "You still owe me." Claire stared at it, stunned. 6 years ago, those were the same words he'd said when they'd parted after that one night neither of them was supposed to remember. And now, they felt like a warning. That night, long after Ethan fell asleep, Claire sat by the window of their apartment, the city lights flickering outside. The business card lay on the table beside her. She whispered to the dark, "You don't even remember me, do you?" She closed her eyes. God, please don't let him find out. Because if he did, everything she'd fought to protect Ethan, their quiet life, her sanity, would come crashing down. The hospital cafeteria was half empty when Alexander Grant first saw him. He was reaching for a cup of juice. At the vending counter, a little boy with messy brown hair and eyes too blue for anyone else in the room. For a second, Alexander thought his mind was playing tricks. Those eyes, sharp, searching, restless. He'd seen them before, in the mirror every morning for 39 years. He froze, cup in hand. The boy turned, caught him staring, and grinned, the kind of innocent smile that didn't know it could break someone. "Hi," the boy said. "You're the guy from TV." Alexander blinked. "I guess I used to be. I saw you on the news once," the boy continued proudly. "My mum says rich people don't eat hospital food." He laughed, caught off guard. "Your mum sounds smart. She's a nurse," the boy said matter-of-factly. "She saves people too." "Yeah?" Alexander asked softly. "What's her name?" "Claire." The sound of her name hit like lightning. Before he could answer, Claire's voice cut through the cafeteria. "Ethan." The boy turned. "Hi, Mum." Alexander stood frozen as she crossed the room, tray in hand, eyes widening when she saw him. "Mr. Grant," she said tightly. "You're out of bed." "Couldn't sleep," he said. "I was just talking to my son," she finished quickly. Ethan looked between them, curious. "You guys know each other?" Alexander smiled faintly. "Something like that." Claire's jaw tightened. "Come on, Ethan, let's go." "Bye, Mr. Grant." "Bye," Kid Alexander murmured, but his gaze didn't leave Claire. Not for a second. Later that afternoon, he couldn't stop thinking about that boy, about those eyes, about her. The more he tried to focus on emails or discharge forms, the more those blue eyes burned behind his lids. By evening, he asked a nurse casually, "That woman Claire Mitchell, she works here?" The nurse shook her head. "Used to, she left 2 years ago. Said she had to take care of her son. Sweet kid." "How old?" "6, I think." 6. The word hit like gravity. 6 years. 6 years since he last saw Claire Mitchell. 6 years since that conference in Chicago. The one night he'd buried under work and whiskey and regret. He found her later that night in the parking lot, loading boxes into the back of her car. "Claire," he called. She stiffened. "What do you want, Alexander?" He approached slowly. "To thank you, again." "You already did." "Then maybe I want to understand. Understand what... Why you look at me like I'm a mistake you regret surviving." She froze, eyes hard. "Because some mistakes don't die just because you walk away from them." He took a step closer. "What happened between us never happened," she cut in. "You don't even remember, do you?" He hesitated. "I remember pieces. A bar, a storm, a woman who didn't ask for anything." She swallowed hard. "You should keep it that way." "Then tell me one thing," he said quietly. "Is that boy?" Her eyes flashed. "Don't you dare." He stopped. "Don't finish that sentence," she said, voice trembling now. "You don't get to ask. You don't get to show up after 6 years and pretend this is your story too." He looked at her, guilt and confusion warring behind his eyes. "If he's mine, he's mine," she said sharply. "He always was." The rain started again, light, cold, like the echo of the night they first collided. Alexander stepped back, chest heavy. "You kept him from me." "I protected him from you," she said. "You don't know what it's like to raise a child alone while pretending his father doesn't exist." "I didn't know," he said. Helplessly. "That's the point," she whispered. They stood there in silence. The parking lot glowing orange under the streetlight dot. "Finally," he said, "let me help." "With his treatment, anything he needs." She shook her head. "We don't need your money," he sighed. "Then what do you need?" She met his gaze, unflinching. "For you to stay gone." Then she turned, climbed into her car, and drove off, taillights vanishing into the rain. Back in his hospital room, Alexander sat alone, staring at the foreline, the storm outside. 6 years of arrogance, of noise, of running from things he didn't understand. And now it had all caught up in the shape of a boy with his eyes. He whispered to the empty room, "I have a son." And for the first time in his life, the word father didn't feel like power. It felt like punishment, and maybe, if he was lucky, a chance to be forgiven. Asterisk hospitals have a strange way of holding their breath before bad news. Everything goes quiet. The halls, the nurses, the air itself, as if the building knows what's coming before anyone says it aloud. For Claire, that quiet came on a Tuesday morning. Ethan was sitting up in bed, pale but smiling, his favorite stuffed dinosaur under one arm. Dr. Patel stood by the window, reading his chart. Claire watched his expression change just slightly and felt her stomach drop. "Is something wrong?" she asked. The doctor turned, polite smile fading. "His heart functions stable for now, but we've run into a concern. He'll need another operation in a few weeks. Before that, we want to do a full blood panel." "Of course," Claire said, already signing the consent form. Dr. Patel hesitated. "Normally, we'd ask for the father's sample, too. There's a marker in Ethan's DNA we can't identify. It could affect anesthesia response." Her hand froze mid-signature. He continued, oblivious. "It's probably nothing, but if we can compare the father's blood type, we can be sure I'm his mother," she interrupted quickly. "That's all you need," Patel smiled gently. "I know, but genetically, his father's not in the picture." Patel nodded, backing off. Understood. We'll work with what we have. But as he left, the paper in her hand trembled, because she knew the doctor was right. Without the father's match, the risk was higher, and the father was lying in another wing of the same hospital. That evening, she couldn't eat, couldn't think. She stood by the vending machine in the dim hallway, the hum of fluorescent lights filling the silence. Her hands were still shaking when she heard his voice. Claire, Alexander, stood behind her, dressed in a hospital gown under a borrowed coat, 4 bandage still on his arm. He looked exhausted, but his eyes were clear, determined. "You shouldn't be walking," she said sharply. "You just got out of surgery. I heard about your son," he said softly. "The nurses talk. You can't hide forever." Her heart skipped. "He's fine, is he?" She glared. "You have no right to ask that." "I have every right if he's mine." The air cracked between them, not loud but deep. "Alexander, I'm not here to fight," he said. "I just want to help. You've helped enough. Claire, I'm not that man anymore." She laughed bitterly. "You don't even remember being him." He hesitated. "Maybe not. But I remember you now. Pieces that night in Chicago. The storm. You wore a red coat." Her breath hitched. "Stop." "I can't," he said. "Every time I look at that boy, I see everything I forgot. Everything I threw away." She turned away. "You don't know what it costs to keep him safe from your world." He stepped closer. "Then let me pay it back." "By what? Signing a check?" "No," he said. "By being there. By not disappearing this time." For a long time, she didn't speak. The hum of the vending machine filled the silence. Finally, she whispered, "He needs blood work. The doctor wants the father's sample." He froze. And I told them no." "Why?" "Because if they test it, they'll know. Everyone will. And once they know who you are, it's over. For me, for him." He swallowed. "Then you're risking his life for privacy." Her voice cracked. "I'm risking everything for him to have a normal childhood." He took a deep breath. "Let me do it." "No." "Claire," I said no. She shouted, louder than she meant to. Her voice echoed down the empty hall. For a moment, neither moved. Then she whispered, almost breaking, "I can't let you back in. Not when you've already left once." He looked at her, pain flickering behind his calm. "Then let me earn my way back." "How?" "Let me be part of his fight," he said quietly. "Even if you hate me for it." The next morning, without telling her, he went to Dr. Patel's office. "I'm Ethan Mitchell's father," he said simply. "You'll have my sample by noon." The doctor blinked. "I wasn't aware, now you are," Alexander said. "Keep it off the record." Patel hesitated, but the tone left no room for argument. Hours later, the test results confirmed what both of them already knew but couldn't admit. Paternal DNA, 99.98%. Matched. When Claire found out, it was nearly midnight. Patel told her gently, apologetically. She sat in the empty hallway for a long time, holding the results. Her hands were numb. He'd done it behind her back, but for the right reason. And that made her angrier than if he'd done it for the wrong one. She found him on the hospital rooftop, sitting alone under the red glow of the exit sign. The city stretched beneath them, endless, glittering, indifferent. "You went behind my back," she said. "I saved your son," he replied. "He's not your redemption story." "No," he said softly. "He's the reason I finally want one." She stared at him, tears burning her eyes. "You don't get to rewrite the past, Alexander." He looked up. "Then let me write the rest differently." The wind whipped around them, cold and clean. She whispered, "You can't fix this." He met her eyes. "Maybe not, but I can stand beside it." Below them, the city lights blurred through her tears. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was fighting alone. And that scared her more than anything. The morning Ethan came out of surgery, the world seemed to hold its breath. The monitors beeped steady. The anesthesia machine hissed, and in that narrow window between fear and relief, Claire forgot how to breathe. When the surgeon stepped out and smiled, she nearly collapsed. "He's stable," Dr. Patel said. "You did good, Mum." She nodded, tears already falling behind her. Alexander stood silent, suit wrinkled, eyes bloodshot, fingers locked together like he didn't trust them to stay still. When she turned to look at him, he just said quietly, "He's strong, like you." She didn't answer. She couldn't, because the gratitude hurt as much as the guilt. For the next few days, life became small again. Hospital trays, beeping machines, whispered updates. Ethan recovered slowly, always asking for his dinosaur, always asking if Mr. Alexander could visit. Claire tried to say no, but every time Ethan smiled when he walked in, she lost another piece of her resistance. "Hey, champ," Alexander said one morning, sitting beside the bed. "How's the heart holding up?" Ethan grinned. "Dr. Patel says I'm like Iron Man now." Alexander laughed softly. "Guess that makes me your sidekick." "No," Ethan said seriously. "You're like my backup dad." The words hit harder than they should have. Claire froze mid-step, pretending to fix Ethan's blanket, while Alexander's eyes flicked to hers. Neither of them said a word. Outside the room later, she found him waiting by the vending machine again. "You shouldn't encourage that," she said. "Encourage what?" "Calling you that." He smiled faintly. "You mean the truth?" "Don't start." He took a deep breath. "Look, I know you don't trust me, but I'm not leaving this time." She folded her arms. "You don't get to decide that. I'm not deciding. I'm asking." Her voice softened despite herself. "Why now, Alexander? Why, after all this time?" He looked down, his voice low. "Because when I woke up in that car, I didn't see headlines or contracts or numbers. I saw the only two people who ever looked at me like I was human." She swallowed hard. "You can't fix 6 years of silence with one surgery." "I know," he said, "but I can start showing up." Over the next weeks, he did. He was there for every checkup, every meal, every endless hour of waiting room boredom. He learned how to fold hospital gowns, how to make instant oatmeal taste edible, how to sit quietly beside a child without trying to control the world. Sometimes Claire caught him just watching Ethan, not like a CEO analyzing a report, but like a man trying to memorize time. One night, after Ethan fell asleep, she found Alexander still in the room, reading aloud from a children's book, his voice low, awkward but gentle. "You can go home," she whispered. He didn't look up. "Maybe I already am." Something in her chest cracked, something she'd built to survive. But guilt doesn't vanish when kindness walks in. One afternoon, a nurse approached her with a tablet. "Ms. Mitchell, billing needs confirmation for the private suite upgrade." "I didn't approve any," she began, but stopped when she saw the signature. Alexander Grant. She stormed out to find him. He was in the hallway, on a call, voice low. Yes, transfer from my personal account. Make sure it's anonymous. Alexander, he turned. Claire, you went behind my back again. It was for your son. No, it was for your conscience. He took a breath. I was trying to help. You don't get to decide what helping looks like for us. She snapped. We survived without you. I know. And I hate that you had to. The silence after was worse than shouting. She finally said, You don't understand. Every time you pay for something, it feels like you're buying pieces of him, he whispered. Then tell me how to stop owing you. She looked at him, angry, broken, scared. You can't, because the only thing you owe me is something you can't give back. Then she walked away before he could ask what that was. That night, Alexander sat in the hospital chapel, dark, empty, smelling of old wood and prayers that never made it out. He hadn't prayed in years. He didn't even know what to say, so he just whispered, Don't let me ruin them again. And maybe for the first time. He meant every word. Asterisk, by the end of the month, Ethan was strong enough to walk the hospital garden again. His small hand clutched Alexander's as they made their way down the path lined with fading roses. Claire followed behind them, pretending to scroll through her phone. But in truth she was watching them, the tall man and the little boy who looked like his echo. Ethan was talking non-stop. Mum says you used to be super rich. Alexander laughed. Used to be, yeah, are you still? He smiled faintly. Depends on what you think being rich means. Ethan shrugged. Having a pool. Then no, Alexander said softly. Not anymore. Claire frowned. What does that mean? He hesitated, looking at her over the boy's head. It means I made some decisions. That night, after Ethan fell asleep, Claire cornered him near the parking lot. What did you mean by that? He exhaled. Grant Biotech, the board wanted to spin off the medical tech division. I stopped it. Then I sold my stake. You what? I liquidated my shares. All of them, she stared at him. You gave up your company. I didn't give it up, he said. I gave it back. It stopped being mine a long time ago. Her voice dropped. You had everything, Alexander. I had noise. Now I have silence. It's terrifying, but clean. She shook her head. You don't understand. You just set yourself on fire again. Maybe, he said quietly. But at least this time, I know why. Over the next week, whispers spread. Reporters hovered around the hospital entrance, snapping photos, asking questions about the fall of the biotech king. Claire hated it, hated seeing microphones shoved in her face, hated the way nurses whispered when she passed. One afternoon, she found Ethan watching the news in the waiting room. Alexander's face on the screen. The words CEO under fire in bold below. Turn that off, she said, too sharply. Why are they mad at him? Ethan asked. She hesitated. Because people don't like when someone changes the rules. Did he do something bad? No, she said softly. He did something good, but they don't know how to handle good. Ethan frowned. Then we'll handle it for him. She smiled, heart aching. Maybe we will. That evening, she found Alexander sitting on a bench outside, head in his hands. His phone lay beside him, screen still lit up with missed calls and messages. Board vote. Crisis management. Media response. You look like someone stole your kingdom, she said. He chuckled weakly. They did. I just helped them draw the map. She sat beside him. You didn't have to do that. I did, he said. Every time I saw you two in that hospital room, I realized I built a world where I could save strangers with machines but couldn't save my own family. Her throat tightened. You barely know him. I know enough, he said. I know he hates broccoli, that he sleeps with a dinosaur, that he counts lightning instead of sheep. I know his laugh sounds like you. She stared at him, voice trembling. You think this makes up for 6 years? He met her gaze, unflinching. No, but it might make the next 6 count. For the first time, she didn't know how to answer him. Her anger had been her armor for so long that laying it down felt like stepping into cold air. After a while, she said quietly, You don't have to keep trying to prove you're not the man I left. He looked at her, tired and open. I'm not doing this for me anymore. Then for who? For the boy who deserves a better man to look up to. The words broke her. Not because they were perfect, but because they were true. A week later, Ethan was discharged. They left the hospital together. 3 people who weren't sure what they were yet, but knew they weren't strangers anymore. On the sidewalk, reporters swarmed. Flashbulbs, microphones, questions, the world closing in again. Mr. Grant. Is it true you sold your company? Who's the woman? Is that your son? Alexander shielded Ethan with his arm. Go ahead, he whispered to Claire. Take him home. What about you? I'll handle this. Alexander, he smiled faintly. Don't worry. I've been handling storms my whole life. Then he turned to the cameras, voice calm, eyes steady. Yes, he said. I sold my company. I didn't lose it, I gave it away. Because there are things in life you can't buy back once you waste them. Like what? Someone shouted. He looked straight at the camera. Time, love, and a son's childhood. The noise faded as the crowd went quiet, unsure if they were witnessing a confession or a rebirth. Claire watched from the car, heart in her throat. For the first time in years, she didn't see the ruthless CEO the world loved to hate. She saw the man she'd met on a rainy night in Chicago, the one who had once looked at her like she was the only real thing in the world. That night, when she tucked Ethan into bed, he asked, Is Mr. Alexander coming tomorrow? She hesitated, then smiled. Maybe. Can he be my dad now? Her eyes burned. He's trying to be, sweetheart. He really is. And when she turned off the light, she whispered to the dark, Please don't let him stop. The city forgot Alexander Grant faster than he expected. 1 month after the press storm, his name slid off headlines and out of boardrooms. Investors found new scandals. The world moved on, except for him. He moved to Maplewood, a small town 2 hours away, where houses had peeling paint and front porches still mattered. No one cared who he used to be there. At the hardware store, they called him Sir only when they remembered. He rented a small house at the end of Birch Lane, white siding, blue shutters, creaky steps. It smelled like dust, and maybe, if he was lucky, redemption, and across the street was Claire's house. When she first saw him unpacking boxes, she almost dropped her coffee. You've got to be kidding me, she muttered. Ethan, standing beside her, grinned. He's our neighbor now. That's not funny, Ethan. It's kind of funny, he said. Later that morning, she crossed the street, arms folded. You moved here. He smiled. Rent's cheap. And the company didn't come with a mansion clause. She exhaled sharply. You could have picked literally anywhere else. He looked around at the quiet street, the maple trees shedding gold leaves. Maybe I didn't want anywhere else. For weeks, their lives found a strange rhythm. Claire worked long shifts at the clinic. Ethan went to school, sometimes wandering across the street for homework help. That was mostly storytelling and cookies. Alexander learned how to fix leaky faucets, mow lawns, and make pancakes that didn't taste like regret. The townspeople liked him, the polite man who never talked about himself, who volunteered at the library and donated old laptops to the school. And slowly, the space between his house and hers began to shrink. One Saturday morning, Claire knocked on his door. When he opened it, she held a bag of groceries. "I heard you've been living on cereal and coffee." He raised an eyebrow. "Spying on me now?" "Ethan told me." "Kids talk," he chuckled. "I thought confidentiality applied to family gossip too." She walked in without waiting for an invitation. "You can't live like this, Alexander." "Like what?" "Like a ghost pretending to play human." He smiled faintly. "I'm getting better at it." She started unpacking groceries, eggs, pasta, tomatoes. "If you're going to live across from us, you might as well learn to cook real food." He leaned against the counter, watching her. "You always take over people's kitchens. Only the ones that look like war zones." For a moment, the silence was comfortable, almost domestic. He caught himself imagining it lasting longer than it should. When she looked up, she saw something in his eyes she hadn't let herself see in years: softness. She turned away before it could hurt. That evening, Ethan insisted on having dinner together like a family. They sat at Alexander's small dining table, mismatched chairs, cheap plates, and laughter echoing off the bare walls. Ethan told stories about school. Alexander asked questions like he was memorizing every word. And Claire, for the first time in a long while, laughed without realizing it. When the dishes were done and Ethan had gone home, she lingered at the door. "This doesn't mean anything," she said softly. "I know," he said. "It just feels like something." She hesitated. "You don't make it easy to hate you anymore." "I stopped trying to be hated." Her lips curved, barely. "That's dangerous." He met her gaze, steady and quiet. "So is hope." The next morning, a letter arrived in her mailbox. It was from Grant Biotech Legal Department. Inside, one line stood out in bold: "Pending custody review. Alexander Grant requests legal visitation rights to Ethan Mitchell." The world spun. Her coffee cup slipped from her hand, shattering on the porch. Across the street, Alexander was stepping out to get his mail, smiling, unaware. Her heart pounded. Had he filed it before moving here? Or was this something new, for the first time? She didn't know whether to run to him or from him. Asterisk, the letter felt heavier than paper. Claire sat at the kitchen table, reading it again and again until the words blurred. Custody review. The phrase echoed like thunder in her head. Across the street, Alexander's lights were on. She could see his shadow through the curtains, tall, calm, unaware that her world was cracking in two. Her hands trembled as she grabbed her coat when he opened the door. She didn't wait for pleasantries. "You filed for custody." The shock on his face was instant, real. "What? Don't play dumb, Alexander." "I got a letter from your company's lawyers." He blinked. "What letter? This?" She snapped, thrusting it into his chest. He took it, scanning the lines, color draining from his face. Then, quietly, "I didn't send this." She crossed her arms. Right, and it just magically appeared from Grant Biotech legal department. I told you, I don't own the company anymore, he said. They must have acted on old paperwork. Old paperwork that says you want visitation rights to my son. He swallowed hard. Our son. Don't, she warned. The silence between them felt like static, thick and electric. I would never take him from you, he said finally. You have to believe that. She laughed bitterly. Believe you. The man who hides things until they explode. I'm not hiding anything now. You didn't tell me about this either, because I didn't know. Then maybe you should start paying attention to what your name still controls. She shouted. You think walking away from your company erases your shadow. It doesn't, Alexander. You built a world that still moves when you blink. He stepped closer, voiced low. And you built a wall I can't climb no matter what I do. Her eyes glistened. That wall protects him, from me, from hurt, from people who leave when things get hard. I'm still here, aren't I? For now. The words hit him harder than she meant. He looked down, shaking his head slowly. You really think I'd take him from you? I don't know what to think anymore, she whispered. Then let me show you. Before she could respond. He walked past her into the rain, heading straight for his car. Where are you going? She called after him. To make this right. The next morning, Claire was woken by a knock on her door. It was Alexander, soaked through, holding a folder. His eyes were red, but his voice was steady. I drove to the city last night, he said. Met with the board, the legal department. I made them sign this. He handed her the folder. Inside was an official letter, notarized and signed. Withdrawal of all prior custody motions. Full parental rights retained by Claire Mitchell. No further legal pursuit permitted without express written consent. She stared at the paper, barely breathing. I didn't just tell them, he said. I made it permanent. She looked up at him, stunned. Why would you? Because I don't want a courtroom to define who we are, he said quietly. If I ever earn the right to be in his life, it'll be because you let me, not because a judge says I can. Her voice cracked. You drove 6 hours in a storm for this. He smiled faintly. You once dragged me out of a burning car. I figured I owed you one. Tears stung her eyes before she could stop them. For a long time, neither spoke. Rain pattered against the porch, soft and relentless. Finally, she whispered, You scare me, Alexander. He frowned. Why? Because every time I start to hate you again, you go and do something like this. He took a step closer. Maybe I'm not asking you to stop hating me. Then what are you asking for? A chance, he said simply. Just one, real one. That night, after Ethan fell asleep, Claire stood at her window. Across the street, Alexander's house was dark, except for a single lamp by the window, the light flickering like a heartbeat refusing to give up. She whispered to the glass, You're making it very hard to keep you out. Outside. The rain kept falling, washing away everything except what refused to be forgotten. Forgiveness didn't arrive with thunder. It came like dawn, slow, quiet, and almost invisible until you realized the darkness was gone. A month after the custody scare, Claire and Alexander's lives found a strange peace. They didn't talk about the past anymore, not because they forgot, but because they were learning to live around it. Ethan had started calling him Alex, not Mr. Alexander anymore, and he spent afternoons building Lego towers in the living room that leaned slightly, like they were trying to touch the sky. Sometimes Claire would find the two of them sitting on the porch steps, heads bent over some secret plan, a paper rocket, a fort blueprint, a silly handshake, and sometimes, when she looked at them from the kitchen window, she'd catch herself smiling before she could stop it. One evening, as she came home from the clinic, she found Alexander fixing her porch light. "You don't have to do that," she said, setting down her bag. "I know," he said, "but I like the view from up here." She rolled her eyes. "You always have to make things sound like a movie, don't you?" He grinned. "Old habits. Hard to kill. Maybe you should stop trying to impress everyone." He climbed down, screwdriver in hand. "I'm not trying to impress everyone." The air between them shifted, soft, charged, unspoken. Claire looked away first. "Dinner's almost ready. You're staying, right?" He blinked, almost surprised. "If that's an invitation, it's leftovers," she said. "Don't flatter yourself." He smiled. "Still the best offer I've had all day." Later that night, after Ethan went to bed, they sat on the porch with mugs of coffee. The autumn air crisp around them. The silence wasn't awkward anymore. It was alive, full of things neither of them had words for. "You know," she said quietly, "I used to hate this town. Every corner reminded me of something I couldn't have. And now?" he asked. "Now it just reminds me that maybe I survived it." He nodded. "You did more than that." She glanced at him. "You talk like someone who's been watching my life like a documentary." He smiled. "Maybe I'm just paying attention now." She stared into her cup. "That's new for you." "I know," he said softly. "I used to think love was something you earned with grand gestures. Turns out, it's just showing up every day." She didn't reply, but the look in her eyes said she heard him. The next morning, he showed up at her clinic with coffee. "For the boss," he said, handing her a cup with a scribbled note on the lid, "strong enough to survive Monday." She laughed despite herself. "You're ridiculous." "Persistent," he corrected. "There's a difference." Her co-workers whispered as they passed the mysterious man in a worn leather jacket, carrying coffee for the single mom doctor. And for once, Claire didn't care, that weekend. Ethan had a school event, a family day. Parents were supposed to come, play games, take photos, make memories. Claire hadn't planned to go. Too many stares, too many questions. But Ethan looked up at her that morning and said, "Can Alex come?" She hesitated. "It's supposed to be for family," he said softly. "He's family." She froze. Alexander, standing by the door, didn't say a word. He just smiled, and somehow that made the choice easier at the event. Ethan beamed as the three of them painted a messy cardboard rocket. When the teacher took their picture, Ethan insisted on standing between them, one arm around each of their shoulders. Alexander leaned slightly closer to Claire. "You're getting paint on my shirt," he murmured. She smirked. "You can afford laundry detergent." "Barely. I'm unemployed, remember?" She chuckled. "You're learning humility." "I'm proud." "I'm learning you," he said quietly. The words made her heart trip before she could respond. Ethan shouted, "Smile." The camera flashed, freezing them in a moment that felt like what forgiveness really was. Not forgetting, but finally breathing again that evening. When she looked at the printed photo, something inside her shifted. They didn't look perfect. They looked real. And for the first time, she thought maybe that was enough. She placed the photo on her nightstand. beside Ethan's drawings and a worn dinosaur toy. Then she whispered to the dark, "Maybe this is what healing looks like." It started with a photo, a grainy, slightly blurred image taken at Maplewood Elementary's Family Day. A man, a woman, and a child standing under paper rockets, smiling like they belonged to each other. To anyone else, it was just a picture. To the internet, it was proof. Within 48 hours, gossip sites lit up. Disgraced CEO Alexander Grant spotted with single mom and child's secret family. Grant biotech scandal deepens. Former exec hiding paternity. By the time Claire saw the headlines, the comments were already spreading like wildfire. She was at the clinic when her phone started buzzing non-stop. When she finally looked, her stomach dropped. There it was, her son's face. Her face, Alexander's, plastered across blogs, talk shows, social media feeds. She barely heard her co-worker's voice. "Claire, are you okay?" "I need to go," she said, already grabbing her coat. Across town, Alexander was standing on his porch, phone to his ear. "Yes, I've seen it," he said tightly. "No, I'm not making a statement." Pause. "I don't care about optics. There's a child involved." He hung up just as Claire's car pulled up. She stormed out, face pale, eyes blazing. "What the hell is this?" "I didn't leak it," he said immediately. "Then who did?" "I don't know. Probably someone at the school, or a reporter fishing for dirt. You should have known this would happen. You're you." He winced. "I thought it was over." "I thought you thought wrong," she snapped. "Do you have any idea what this means for Ethan? For me?" "I'll handle it." She laughed, sharp, bitter. "You can't handle the internet, Alexander. You can't control the world anymore. I can protect you. You already failed at that once." The words hung in the air like lightning. He didn't argue. He just whispered, "I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't unsee the photos," she said, voice trembling now. "He's 6. He doesn't deserve this." That night, reporters started showing up at the end of Birch Lane. Cars idled under streetlights. Camera flashes burst through the trees. Ethan peeked through the curtains. "Mum, why are there people outside?" Claire knelt down, forcing a calm she didn't feel. "They're just curious, honey. Go to your room, okay?" "Are they mad at Alex?" She hesitated. "No, they just don't understand him." Minutes later, there was a knock at the door. Alexander stood there, rain dripping from his jacket, his expression heavy with something between guilt and determination. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "I can't let you face this alone. Being here makes it worse." "I don't care," he said. "Let them see me. Let them think whatever they want. I'm not running this time." She shook her head. "You think this is noble?" "It's reckless, maybe," he said softly. "But the last time I stayed silent, I lost both of you. I'm not doing that again." Before she could respond, a voice called from outside, "Mr. Grant. Care to comment?" Alexander glanced over his shoulder, then back at her. "Trust me." She hesitated. "Because this time, I'm going to protect you, right?" He stepped outside, into the rain and the flashing lights. The cameras turned instantly. Microphones reached out like claws. "Mr. Grant. Who's the woman? Is the child yours? Are you living together?" Alexander stood still, soaked to the bone, eyes fierce but calm. "Yes," he said simply. "That woman is the person who saved my life. twice, once from a car fire and once from myself. The crowd fell silent, and the boy, someone asked. Alexander's throat worked. He's the reason I learnt what love actually means. More flashes, more questions. He held up a hand. That's all I'll say. Leave them alone. Then he turned and walked back to the house, closing the door gently behind him. Inside, Claire stood frozen. She'd been watching through the window, every word hitting harder than the last. Why did you say that? She whispered when he stepped in. Because the truth doesn't have to hide anymore. You just told the entire world about us. He looked at her, rain dripping down his face like tears he refused to shed. No, I told them about me. Her voice broke. You just made our lives impossible. He nodded. Maybe, but at least now we're impossible together. That night, after the reporters left and the street went quiet again, Claire tucked Ethan into bed. He looked up sleepily. Mum, yes, honey. Are we famous now? She laughed softly, tears in her eyes. No, sweetheart. We're just loved in public, and somehow that didn't sound so bad. The world didn't end, it just adjusted. After the storm, the headlines began to fade, pushed aside by fresher scandals, louder chaos. The photos of the billionaire and the nurse drifted down the algorithm until they were just another story people have remembered. But for Claire, the noise never really went away. It hummed beneath the quiet, like a song she couldn't forget the lyrics to. Everywhere she went, the clinic, the grocery store, the school, people stared a little too long. Some smiled, some whispered. A few said she was brave. Others said she was foolish. She learned to stop caring which was which. One afternoon, as she walked out of the clinic, she found Alexander waiting by his truck, leaning against the door. 2 coffees in hand. You shouldn't be here, she said automatically. He smiled. You say that a lot, and you never listen. He handed her a cup. Decaf. Doctor's orders. She sighed, taking it despite herself. You've been reading my prescriptions now. Just your mood swings, he said, smiling. Careful, she warned. I could still make you bleed. He laughed, that low, unguarded sound she hadn't realized she missed until now. They drove in silence to Maplewood Park, where Ethan was at soccer practice. The afternoon sun dipped gold across the field. Children's laughter cutting through the autumn air. Claire sat on the bleachers while Alexander stood by the fence, watching their son run, trip, laugh, get back up. Does he know? She asked quietly, that I'm his father. She nodded. He shook his head. Not yet. I figured we'd tell him when you're ready. She looked at him, eyes soft. When we're ready. He smiled faintly. That's progress. After practice, Ethan ran toward them, grass stains on his knees and the sun caught in his hair. Did you see my goal? He yelled 3 times. Alexander said proudly, each one better than the last. Claire ruffled Ethan's hair. He's not wrong, Ethan grinned. Can we get ice cream? Maybe, she said. If someone finishes their homework. I mean, adults have homework too, Alexander said seriously. We could all use a reward. Ethan laughed. See, Mum? Even Alex says so. She rolled her eyes. You two are trouble. Family tradition, Alexander said softly. She didn't correct him this time. That evening, after dinner, Claire stood at her window again. Across the street, Alexander's porch, light, glowed, steady, warm. She could see him through the window, helping Ethan with a science project, both of them arguing over glue and glitter. It felt ordinary, and that was everything. For years, she had built her life around control, around keeping pain predictable. But now, she realized, maybe she didn't have to control it anymore. Maybe she could just live. Later that night, she found a letter slipped under her door. Her name was written in Alexander's handwriting, neat, careful, almost hesitant. Claire, I used to think redemption was a finish line, something you crossed and never looked back. But it isn't. It's just a road you keep walking, hoping someone's walking beside you. If you ever want company, I'm right across the street. A dot. She stood there for a long time, reading it again and again. Then she folded it neatly and slipped it into the drawer beside her bed, next to Ethan's drawings and that old hospital photo from years ago. The next morning, she knocked on his door. When he opened it, she simply said, "You're late for breakfast." He blinked. "Breakfast? You said you wanted to walk beside us," she said. "You can start by making pancakes." He smiled, that small, quiet smile that had once been hidden behind boardroom walls and PR masks. "Yes, ma'am," he said softly. "I make terrible pancakes, though." She smirked. "Then it's perfect. We're a family of disasters." He laughed. "Sounds like home." Asterisk. A year later, the town barely remembered that Alexander Grant had once been famous. Now, he was just Alex, the man who fixed fences, made bad pancakes, and never missed a Little League game. Claire still worked at the clinic, now expanded into a small family practice. Her name on the sign, Dr. Claire Mitchell and Associates, gleamed in the morning sun. And every morning, before unlocking the door, she'd look across the street at the blue-shuttered house and smile, because she wasn't doing any of it alone anymore. It was Saturday. Early autumn again, the kind of crisp morning that smelled like maple leaves and cinnamon coffee. Ethan was in the yard, shouting instructions to a group of kids as Alexander helped them build small model rockets. "Okay. Team," Ethan said, waving a clipboard he'd made from cardboard. "Count down in 3, 2, wait." Alexander interrupted. "Safety goggles." The kids groaned. Claire laughed from the porch, mug in hand. "He's the only person who can make rocket science sound like parenting." Alexander looked up at her, smiling. "And you love it?" "Maybe," she said, pretending to sip. "Admit it," he teased. "You love when I'm responsible." "Only because it's so rare," she shot back. He laughed, shaking his head. "You're never going to let me live down my mistakes, are you?" "Not a chance." The kids' countdown resumed. 3, 2, 1, and the tiny rockets shot into the sky, glittering against the blue. Ethan jumped up and down, cheering. "We did it." Alexander high-fived him, pride softening every line of his face. And for a moment, Claire just stood there, heart full, watching the two of them, the man who'd once lost everything, and the boy who'd taught him what mattered. That afternoon, the three of them had lunch on the porch. Ethan was talking non-stop about his next mission, crumbs all over his face. Claire leaned back, soaking in the sound. "He's going to take over the world someday." Alexander smiled. "Then I'll be the first one he fires." She chuckled. "You'd probably deserve it." He looked at her, quiet for a moment. "You know, I used to think success was skyscrapers and applause. But it's this." She glanced at him. "Burnt sandwiches and noisy kids." He smiled softly. "Yeah, exactly this." The way he said it, simple, sure, and true, made something in her settle. Later that evening, when Ethan was asleep, Claire stepped out onto the porch again. The sky was streaked with the last pink of sunset. Across the street, Alexander was sitting on his steps, tinkering with a broken model rocket. She crossed over, barefoot on the cool pavement. "You never stop fixing things, do you?" she said. He smiled. "Some things are worth fixing twice." She sat beside him. "You did it, you know." "Did what?" "Built something that lasted." He looked at her, really looked, and his voice dropped. "We built it." She smiled faintly. Together, he reached over, brushing a strand of hair from her face, and said softly, "You know, this porch could use one more chair." "For what?" "For whoever comes next," he said. "Friends, family, whatever the world sends us." She tilted her head. "You sound almost hopeful." "I am," he said simply. "For the first time in my life, I'm not afraid of what stays." The wind shifted cool, gentle, carrying the scent of rain and wood smoke. Somewhere inside, Ethan stirred and mumbled in his sleep. The stars came out one by one, quiet witnesses to the life they'd built from broken pieces. Claire leaned her head on Alexander's shoulder. "Hey," she whispered. "Yeah, you still make terrible pancakes." He laughed softly. "Good thing you still burn coffee." And for once, that was enough. Not perfection, not fairy tale, just enough.